June 23rd, 1942. The morning at RAF Pembrey in South Wales began like any other, with the distant drone of engines and the routine bustle of ground crews tending to their Spitfires. But as a patch of low cloud drifted over the airfield, a shape emerged that made every head turn. Through binoculars, spotters caught sight of a sleek, unfamiliar silhouette slicing through the mist. A German fighter, the feared Focke-Wulf 190, descending with unnerving calm toward British soil. For a heartbeat, time seemed to slow. Alert sirens remained silent. Anti-aircraft gunners hesitated, their fingers poised but uncertain. Something about the approach was wrong. This was not the frantic, desperate dive of a pilot in trouble. This was a controlled, deliberate landing. The FW-190 touched down on the grass runway with a grace that belied its reputation for ferocity. Its wheels rolled to a stop near the control tower, engines idling before falling silent. The canopy slid back, and a young German pilot, Oberleutnant Armin Faber, climbed out, his leather helmet in hand, scanning the unfamiliar landscape. Expecting the gray uniforms of his comrades, he was instead met by a sea of RAF blue, their faces a mixture of shock, suspicion, and awe. For a moment, Faber stood frozen, the reality of his mistake dawning as he took in the Spitfires lined up along the flight line. His blood ran cold. He was not in France, as he had believed. He was deep in enemy territory, and his war had just taken a turn no one could have predicted. How had Germany's most advanced fighter landed itself, intact, on a British airfield? What secrets did this machine carry beneath its armored skin? As RAF personnel closed in, the questions multiplied. Was this a defection, a navigational blunder, or something more sinister? None of those present could have imagined that this single, silent landing would unlock the mysteries of the Luftwaffe's deadliest weapon and shift the balance of power in the skies over Europe. The story of how a German pilot delivered his nation's greatest secret into enemy hands was just beginning, and it would change the air war forever. In the summer of 1942, the skies over Western Europe were a crucible of innovation and terror. The Focke-Wulf 190, sleek and deadly, had burst onto the scene less than a year before, and its impact was immediate and devastating. Allied pilots, once confident in their Spitfires and Hurricanes, now found themselves outclassed by a machine that seemed to defy every tactic they knew. The FW-190 was faster in level flight, could outdive and outroll anything the RAF put in the air, and its concentrated firepower shredded even the most skilled adversaries. Squadron leaders whispered warnings in the ready rooms. Avoid turning. Fights, never follow a 190 into a dive, and pray you never met one head-on. Reports of mounting losses filtered back to command, and the mood among Allied air crews shifted from pride to anxiety. Veteran pilots who had survived the Battle of Britain were now being shot down by an enemy they could barely see, let alone defeat. The FW-190's reputation grew with every encounter, its very silhouette striking fear into those who glimpsed it through the clouds. For the Luftwaffe, the new fighter was a symbol of technological superiority and a source of swaggering confidence. German pilots boasted of their butcher bird, certain that no Allied aircraft could match its prowess. Yet beneath the bravado, the Allies were desperate. Every scrap of intelligence was pored over, every wreckage examined for clues. But the FW-190's secrets remained locked away, its weaknesses unknown, its strengths unchallenged. The balance of power in the air seemed to have shifted for good, until fate intervened, and a single pilot's navigational error would offer the Allies the breakthrough they so desperately needed. Oberleutnant Armin Faber was not the image of a reckless novice, but rather a disciplined and ambitious young officer in the Luftwaffe's elite Jagdgeschwader II. Born in 1915, Faber had grown up in a Germany transformed by war and ideology, his childhood shaped by stories of aerial heroes and national resurgence. By his early 20s, he had already proven himself in combat, earning respect among his peers for his sharp instincts and steady nerves. Faber was known for his meticulous attention to detail, a pilot who studied his aircraft as intently as he studied the enemy, and who believed deeply in the mission entrusted to him. On June 23, 1942, Faber's squadron was tasked with providing top cover for a formation of German bombers striking targets along the British coast. The mission was routine by the standards of the day, dangerous, certainly, but not extraordinary. Faber's FW-190 was a marvel of engineering, and he took pride in flying what many considered the Luftwaffe's finest machine. As the group crossed the English Channel, the tension in the cockpit was familiar, a blend of anticipation and calculation. Faber's mind flickered between the tactical demands of the mission and the personal stakes. The camaraderie of his squadron, the expectations of his superiors, and the ever-present hope of returning home in one piece. The initial engagement unfolded as expected. British fighters rose to intercept, and the sky erupted into a chaotic ballet of speed and fire. Faber maneuvered with practiced precision, his senses attuned to every shift in the battle. Yet, as the dogfight intensified and clouds swallowed, the horizon, the line between friend and foe, land and sea, began to blur. In the confusion, a single navigational misjudgment would set Faber on a course that no amount of training could have prepared him for, a course that would soon transform a routine mission into a moment of history-altering chaos. The chaos of aerial. Combat in 1942 was unlike anything most men could imagine. Pilots hurled themselves through the sky at breakneck speeds, senses battered by the roar of engines, the rattle of gunfire, and the relentless pull of gravity. For Armin Faber, the dogfight over the Channel was a blur of flashing wings and tracer rounds, the world outside his cockpit reduced to a shifting tapestry of cloud, sunlight, and sudden danger. In those frantic moments, even the most experienced aviators could lose their bearings. The horizon vanished behind a wall of vapor, and the sun's position, so often a pilot's compass, became a trickster, casting false shadows and distorting direction. As the engagement broke apart, Faber found himself alone, separated from his squadron and unsure of his position. He scanned the landscape below, searching for familiar landmarks, but the coastline that emerged through the thinning clouds was green and inviting, dotted with airfields that looked to his weary eyes like safe havens. Faber's training told him he was over friendly territory. Surely this was France, just across the Channel from the chaos he'd left behind. The stress of combat, the disorienting effects of high-G maneuvers, and the deceptive play of light all conspired to convince him he was home. With his fuel running low and nerves frayed, Faber committed to his decision. He lined up for landing, lowering his gear and guiding the FW-190 down with the practiced confidence of a seasoned pilot. The aircraft touched down smoothly, rolling to a stop near the control tower. Only then, as he slid back the canopy and took in the unfamiliar uniforms and the unmistakable silhouettes of Spitfires, did the truth crash over him. He was not in France. He was deep in enemy territory, his prized fighter now a trophy on British soil. The implications were staggering. The Allies had spent months trying to capture an intact FW-190, desperate to unlock its secrets. Now, by a twist of fate, one had landed in their lap. What would they do with this unexpected windfall? As RAF, personnel rushed to secure the aircraft and its bewildered pilot. The stage was set for a turning point in the air war, one that would unfold in the hours and days to come. The Allies react. A windfall for intelligence. The news of a German FW-190 landing intact on British soil spread through RAF Pembry like wildfire. At first, disbelief reigned. Surely this was some elaborate ruse, a trick or a trap. But as the reality set in, shock gave way to a surge of excitement. Ground crews and officers swarmed the aircraft, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and suspicion. The FW-190, the very machine that had haunted Allied pilots for months, now sat quietly on their runway, its engine ticking as it cooled in the Welsh air. For British intelligence, it was nothing short of a miracle. Within minutes, the airfield was locked down. Armed guards surrounded the fighter, and Oberleutnant Faber was taken into custody. His confusion matched only by the urgency of his captors. Senior officers arrived in a flurry of staff cars, their faces alight with the knowledge that they were witnessing a moment of historic significance. The RAF had tried everything, intercepting, ambushing, even plotting daring raids, to get their hands on a flyable FW-190. Now, by sheer chance, the enemy's most advanced weapon had delivered itself, complete and undamaged. The implications were immediately clear. Here was an opportunity to study the FW-190's construction, armament, and performance up close, to finally understand what made it so formidable in combat. Intelligence officers wasted no time, photographing every inch of the aircraft, cataloging its features, and preparing it for transport to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. The excitement was palpable, tempered only by the awareness that this windfall could not be wasted. Every detail mattered. Every discovery could save lives. As the FW-190 was carefully prepared for its journey into the hands of Britain's top engineers, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. The Allies now possessed the key to unlocking the Luftwaffe's deadliest secret. What they would find beneath the skin of this remarkable machine would soon reshape the very nature of the air war. Technical treasure. Unveiling the FW-190's secret set. The Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough. The captured FW-190 was treated with the reverence reserved for a priceless artifact. British engineers, joined by American experts, approached the fighter with a mix of curiosity and urgency, knowing that every detail they uncovered could tip the scales in the ongoing air war. The first order of business was a meticulous inspection. Panels were removed, instruments catalogued, and every inch of the airframe was measured and photographed. What they found was both impressive and sobering. The FW-190's design was a masterclass in practical engineering. Its BMW 801 radial engine delivered a staggering 1700 horsepower, outpacing the Merlin engines of the Spitfire Mk-3. The robust air-cooled system allowed the FW-190 to absorb damage and keep flying, a stark contrast to the more delicate liquid-cooled engines of its adversaries. The cockpit layout was another revelation. Controls were logically arranged, gauges easy to read, and the pilot's field of vision was exceptional. It was clear that German designers had prioritized both survivability and combat efficiency. Armament was where the FW-190 truly set itself apart. 4 20mm cannons and 2 7.92mm machine guns gave it a devastating punch, capable of shredding enemy aircraft in seconds. The concentration of firepower near the fuselage meant that even a brief burst could be lethal. Allied pilots had long complained about the FW-190's ability to outgun and outmaneuver them, and now the reasons were plain to see. The aircraft's roll rate was unmatched, allowing it to snap from one bank to another with astonishing speed. In a dogfight, this agility made the FW-190 a nightmare opponent, able to evade attacks and line up shots with ease. As the engineers delved deeper, they uncovered the subtle trade-offs that made the FW-190 so formidable at low and medium altitudes, but less effective at high altitude where the engine struggled. These aha moments explained the patterns of combat losses and survivals that had puzzled Allied commanders for months. The technical treasure trove offered by Faber's mistake was more than just a list of specifications. It was the key to understanding and ultimately countering the Luftwaffe's deadliest weapon. Armed with this knowledge, the Allies were ready to turn insight into action. Armed with the secret's pride from the FW-190, Allied commanders wasted no time in transforming knowledge into action. Tactical bulletins were rushed to squadrons across Britain, each one packed with hard-won insights. Avoid low-altitude dogfights. Never try to outroll a FW-190, and force engagements above 20,000 feet where the German fighter's engine faltered. Training programs were overhauled almost overnight. Pilots pored over diagrams and performance charts, learning to recognize the FW-190's silhouette and anticipate its moves. The days of blind fear were over. Now, every Allied airman had a playbook for survival. Test pilots at Farnborough and American bases took the captured FW-190 into the sky, pushing it to its limits and documenting every quirk. Their reports became gospel. Captain Eric Brown, one of Britain's most experienced test pilots, described the FW-190's roll rate as astonishing, but also noted how its controls stiffened dangerously at high speeds. American Major Cass Houff flew the fighter and reported that above 25,000 feet, Allied aircraft like the P-47 Thunderbolt and the new Spitfire Mk9 could finally claim the advantage. These revelations were quickly woven into combat doctrine, changing the way entire squadrons approached the enemy. The psychological effect was just as profound. Where once the FW-190 had been a phantom, its reputation magnified by rumor and defeat, it was now a known quantity. Pilots who had dreaded the sight of its wings now faced it with a new sense of confidence. Stories spread of Allied flyers using their newfound knowledge to outmaneuver and outfight the Luftwaffe's best. The balance of fear shifted, and with it, the momentum of the air war. Aircraft designers, too, took note. Modifications to the Spitfire and P-47 were inspired by the FW-190's strengths, from improved roll rates to concentrated firepower. The Allies were not just catching up, they were adapting, innovating, and preparing to seize the initiative. The intelligence coup at Pembry had become a catalyst for change, and as new tactics took hold, the skies over Europe began to look very different. The ripple effects of this transformation would soon be felt far beyond the training fields and briefing rooms. The impact of the captured FW-190 rippled outward, reshaping the very fabric of the air war. With the fighter's secrets laid bare, Allied engineers and tacticians moved swiftly to close the gap. The Spitfire Mk9, rushed into service with a more powerful engine and refined controls, was a direct answer to the FW-190's dominance. Suddenly, British pilots found themselves able to match the German fighter in speed and climb, erasing the sense of helplessness that had haunted them for months. Across the Atlantic, American designers took lessons from the FW-190's roll rate and firepower, channeling them into the development of the P-51 Mustang, a machine that would soon become the scourge of the Luftwaffe. Combat strategies evolved just as rapidly. No longer did Allied squadrons blunder into the traps that had cost so many lives. Instead, they dictated the terms of engagement, luring FW-190s into high-altitude battles where the German engines gasped for power. The hunter had become the hunted. German pilots, once so sure of their technological edge, now found themselves on the defensive, forced to adapt to a battlefield that no longer favored them. The psychological shift was unmistakable. Allied air crews, armed with knowledge and improved machines, flew with renewed confidence. The myth of the invincible FW-190 was shattered, replaced by a hard-earned respect for its strengths and a clear-eyed understanding of its flaws. Each victory in the sky was a testament to the power of intelligence and adaptation, a reminder that even the most daunting adversary could be overcome. Yet, as the Allies pressed their advantage, the Luftwaffe was not idle. The loss of their secret weapon forced German engineers and commanders to respond, sparking a new phase in the technological arms race. The skies over Europe were about to become even more contested, as both sides raced to outthink and outfly the other. News of the FW-190's capture sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe's upper ranks. What had been their most closely guarded secret was now in enemy hands, its strengths and weaknesses exposed for Allied engineers to dissect. German intelligence scrambled to assess the damage, fearing that every tactical edge painstakingly gained was now slipping away. The loss was more than technical, it was a blow to the very heart of the Luftwaffe's confidence. Pilots who had once flown with swagger now faced the unsettling reality that their adversaries knew their machine as intimately as they did. In response, German engineers rushed to develop improvements, introducing new variants like the FW-190D with a more powerful engine and better high-altitude performance. Training manuals were revised and tactics adjusted in an effort to regain the lost advantage. But the sense of invincibility was gone. Stories circulated among pilots about the Allies' uncanny ability to anticipate their moves, and every encounter in the sky now carried a shadow of doubt. The psychological toll was unmistakable. Aces who had once dominated the air now flew with a wariness that dulled their edge. For the Luftwaffe, the capture of the FW-190 was a bitter lesson in the cost of complacency and the unpredictability of war. The balance of power had shifted, and the race for aerial supremacy had entered a new, more desperate phase. As the German command struggled to adapt, the fate of the pilot at the center of this turning point, Armin Faber, became a story all its own, marked by consequences neither he nor his superiors could have foreseen. In the days following his capture, Armin Faber was interrogated by British intelligence, his bewilderment slowly giving way to resignation. He was sent to a prisoner-of-war camp in Canada, far from the chaos of Europe, where he would spend the remainder of the conflict. Among his fellow prisoners, Faber's story became legend, a cautionary tale of how a single moment of confusion could alter the course of a war. For the Allies, he was the unwitting architect of a turning point, the man whose error had handed them the Luftwaffe's greatest secret. For the Germans, his name was spoken with a mix of frustration and reluctant understanding, a reminder that even the best-trained pilots were not immune to the fog of war. The legacy of Faber's mistake extended far beyond his personal fate. The intelligence gained from his captured FW-190 shaped Allied tactics, inspired new aircraft designs, and helped restore balance to the skies over Europe. The mythos of the FW-190 itself was forever changed from an invincible predator to a machine. With strengths and flaws, its aura of mystery dispelled by the cold light of analysis. Historians would later point to that June day in 1942 as a pivotal moment when the tide of the air war began to turn. Yet for all the technical and strategic consequences, the story of Armin Faber endures as a testament to the unpredictable nature of conflict. It is a reminder that history is often shaped not just by grand strategies or superior machines, but by the smallest of human errors, moments when chance, confusion, and fate collide. And as the war raged on, the echoes of Faber's landing would continue to reverberate, challenging all who heard it to consider the true cost and chaos of war. History often turns on the grand strategies of generals and the might of machines, but sometimes it pivots on a single unplanned moment, a fleeting error that ripples outward to change the fate of nations. Armin Faber's navigational mistake was just such a moment. In the chaos of battle, a wrong turn became a windfall for the Allies, transforming the balance of power in the skies and saving the lives of countless airmen who would have otherwise faced the FW-119's deadly advantage. Intelligence, so often. The silent force behind victory found its champion not in a spy or a codebreaker, but in a young pilot lost above the clouds. The story of the captured FW-190 is a testament to the unpredictable nature of war, where human error can be as decisive as any weapon. It reminds us that even in the most meticulously planned campaigns, chance and confusion can upend expectations and rewrite destinies. The Allies' ability to seize opportunity from chaos, to learn and adapt, became a defining strength, a lesson as relevant today as it was in 1942. As we look back on this remarkable episode, we are left to wonder how many other turning points in history have hinged on moments just as small, just as unexpected. Perhaps you have your own family stories of chance and survival, of mistakes that became miracles. Share them below and join the conversation about the hidden forces that shape our world. In the end, it is these stories of luck, loss, and learning that remind us how fragile and extraordinary the course of history truly is.